Cool. Thanks so much, Tiernan. And it's so great to see all of you here today. I hope everyone is having a very good Friday. Before I get started, I want to make sure to mention right at the top that we are proud collaborators and partners of AMS. All of the work that I'm going to describe is being done in partnership with AMS, and AMS itself is hosting these projects within this program and just like them. A number of our projects, I should mention, are also done in collaboration with Julia Drapkin's group, ISeeChange. So lots of overlap here in terms of organizations. And I also want to drop a couple of links in the chat now before I forget. They will make sense as I go through this, but now you have them. All right. Thriving Earth Exchange is an AGU program where we connect communities and scientists and help them work together to do projects that advance community priorities. That's our program in a nutshell. What we're looking to do is building a shared future where all communities can participate in, contribute to, and guide the use of scientific knowledge. So we connect communities to scientists to do just that. And what we're also doing is working to share a community science framework internationally so that other groups around the world can take this process that we've developed, adapt it to suit their local context, and get more community science projects happening on the ground where they are. I want to take a minute to define the term community science. We use the definition, it's the process by which scientists and communities do science together to advance one or more community priorities. And I underlined and bolded the words together and community priorities because they are very key in that definition. And when you're doing community science, what you're doing is centering communities who are historically shut out of science, in fact, prioritizing engagement with those communities. And what you're also doing is centering and following the leadership of local knowledge and expertise. If we had a motto, one of them would be community drives the bus. That's really important that we're following the direction and leadership and guidance of communities. They point us in the direction that we're supposed to be going in. Core principles within community science, two of them right here are beginning with community priorities and ending with community impact. To illustrate this with a brief story, this is a photo from the 7th Ward of New Orleans, a project that we did with a group called Healthy Community Services, and which Julia with ISeeChange was involved in as well. And this project, I'll kind of describe the middle of it. What they did was set up a network of heat sensors around the community to identify what kind of local temperature impacts we're seeing in places where there are trees or where there are not, where there's young trees that have just been planted or where there's trees that have been a lot older. It was a local heat sensor exercise. They did surveys to what members of the community to learn about how they feel about the trees, how they feel about their local neighborhood, what kind of impacts are they identifying when it comes to heat in terms of how they're engaging and just going about their lives in their community and health impacts that they're getting. And all of this together is coming together to give a picture of the local climate impacts in the community and how it's affecting people's day-to-day lives. The reason that work was done was because the community came to Thriving Earth Exchange and said that we're planting these trees and we want to know what impact it's having. That's our question, that's our priority. We want more trees and we want to know the science of what's happening as we do that work. And for the end community impact, the community now has that knowledge at their hands. They have data and infrastructure that allows them to do more of this work in a more informed way, and all kinds of other things are coming from this work. There's a bench with a solar panel in the community that people are kind of coming together around, and there's all kinds of engagement and exercises and knowledge coming from this work. The third principle I want to mention is that science is a community right. All communities have the right to ask and answer their own scientific questions. Another New Orleans example, this is the I-10 corridor of Claiborne Avenue community. We worked with the Claiborne Avenue Alliance led by Amy Stelly, and basically the story of this community is it was a thriving African-American neighborhood. In the 1950s, they built I-10, an elevated highway through the community, and it changed the nature of the community, how it looked, how people got around, and just sort of how they felt about their local environment. So Amy came to us with questions about what are the environmental impacts from this elevated highway? What kind of air pollution is happening? What runoff looks like, noise impacts, what is it doing to them? And so this project involved taking air quality measurements. They worked with another group locally called Public Lab, and they sent up balloons to take pictures. They engaged students to develop their narratives and observations about what was happening. The local news got involved. And when we started working with Amy, it was in, I believe it was 2018. And when she introduced her community priority, she described it as like a moonshot. People were like, you're crazy for wanting to get rid of a whole highway. That's nuts. Fast forward until last year, and this highway was one of many that were identified for a highway removal project in the now relatively torpedoed infrastructure plan. But movement is happening, and it's happening because communities are asking questions and advocating for their priorities and using science to tell their stories. Now, so those are the principles. That's two quick examples of Thriving Earth Exchange community science projects. I want to share a little bit about how it works in practice, some more of the nuts and bolts. What we do is provide a flexible but guided framework that communities and scientists are able to use to navigate starting a relationship and, most importantly, getting something done. So we connect with communities we start with scope, so understanding what their priorities are, articulating a project. We match them to a scientist who has the right skills and technical expertise to work with them on that project. They then engage together to get the work done, and they share throughout the whole process about what they're doing, how it's working, what they're learning, and inviting people into the project. Typically, it's a one-to-one relationship between one or a couple of community leads and a couple of scientists. It's not so much done with institutions, it's generally in individuals who are engaging. And each of those teams is supported by a dedicated project manager. We call them a community science fellow. This is a person who really helps build the bridge between the community and scientist and helps them engage together effectively, make sure they're meeting well, setting goals, reaching milestones, etc. This is free to communities to participate, but it does ask their time. It's not a consulting engagement. They have as much knowledge and skill to bring to the table as a PhD hydrologist does. It's volunteer effort. Our scientists and fellows are not paid for the work that they do, and projects are relatively short term. They typically last about 6 to 18 months. Most come in at about a year. I also wanted to identify ways for individuals to engage with Thriving Earth Exchange. One of the benefits of that flexible but guided framework is that it is a place for people to get their feet wet in doing community science. It's a supported environment. It's a way to meet a community, learn how this works, and in a way where you have the support of our staff and our volunteers. I invite you to consider joining us as a community scientist. This is a person who is bringing their particular scientific skills and expertise to a project. The third link, I believe I shared with you, has a page with about 30 projects currently actively seeking scientists. Many are local, but many more can be done remotely. So I encourage you to browse that. And then there's also quarterly opportunities to join us as a community science fellow. This is for anyone of any career stage or background who we train in our approach, and they engage in the teams as a project manager. We're currently recruiting for a cohort of projects that are going to launch in April, specifically within the state of Wisconsin. So we'll be prioritizing Wisconsin residents for the Community Science Fellowship opportunity. That deadline is March 1st. And that's all I have for you. Just want to give a quick overview of Thriving Earth Exchange and community science, and I'm really looking forward to the other presentations and engaging in a discussion afterwards. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Julia, if you wanted to share your screen.
Awesome. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Good stuff?
Sounds
good. Melissa, it's an honor and always grateful to be co-presenting with some of my favorite peoples, both in the previous conversations as well as with Melissa, who in AGU, Thriving Earth Exchange, they are sole collaborators of ISeeChange. And Joey as well include in that group. So I'm Julia Kumari Drapkin, I'm the CEO of ISeeChange. ISeeChange is a mission-driven social impact company. to connect people to each other and their changing environment to develop climate solutions. And so many of you might have been familiar with ISeeChange in the past. We're a very popular community science tool here in the US and globally, and we're honored for that. What I'm going to go over are some of the applications of ISeeChange you may not be as familiar with. We solve for two critical problems that we've seen when it comes to climate infrastructure and solutions making. One is the modeled products that cities and engineers are using to develop infrastructure solutions. And we see this problem across flooding, heat, tree mapping, air quality, name that thing. And it has a lot to do with granularity and the design of modeling products for mismatching to its intended purpose. But it also misses really critical context, granularity and context that only community members can provide. The other big issue that we are dealing with when it comes to climate infrastructure and solutions design is inequity and participation. And I think my colleague on the other side in Shreveport, over here in New Orleans, can attest that we don't have as much participation from the people who are most impacted by climate extremes. And the problem is that they have the most information to contribute to solutions, critical details that are often missing in solutions design. So ISeeChange is a platform to help bring all of us together to see the same things, use the same data, and co-design solutions together. ISeeChange is a real-time platform. It's geosocial. It's AI-enabled, which allows us to work across multiple climate impacts and solutions. And we're providing hyper-local details per climate impact. Again, we're working, bringing the public together with the people, the decision makers, as you all might use that word, but they're real people too, the engineers, the municipalities, the utilities, and the researchers to all come together and use the same information. And we are grateful that people have used our data and see value in the execution of it into real-time solutions, into real problems that are getting solved, whether it's engineers or cities or utilities. So a few examples, and then I'm going to drill into one big example about our work in Miami. Again, just to echo Melissa, we're based in New Orleans. Our team is digital and global, but this is where we do most of our hard learning, if you will. This was a Thriving Earth Exchange in 2017, and then continued with city contracts and engineering companies to use ISeeChange to track flooding in partnership with community members. This was the Gentilly Resilience District, where we were on 2 of the 7 projects. We were able to quadruple participation that you normally get in workshops and terrible meetings that nobody has time to go to. And we trained residents to track flooding across, and they did it across 29 flood events. And they proved that the flood models were underestimating risk in low-income neighborhoods and overestimating risk in wealthier neighborhoods. And as a result of this community source data, the modeling was redone, and $4.8 million was reallocated to the low-income neighborhood. It will now be hosting the largest underground storage tank of its kind in the South, and it 2.5 times the storage capacity of its original intended design project. So this is our big win, and it took time, but it was community driven and it was community sourced, and it had everything to do with working together. Another real quick, I'm trying to go fast through these examples, was some of the heat work that we also started in Gentilly, and then also worked in the 7th Ward with Melissa and Angela Chalk's group to host sensor networks. But then we deepened the work with the New Orleans Health Department and are continuing the work with RAND, where we put localized sensor networks in New Orleans neighborhoods that are considered heat islands. We left those sensors over the course of multiple summers. And then we had residents actually tracking heat inside their homes. And we proved that on certain days, we were missing critical heat alerts in some of these neighborhoods where hot conditions were unhealthy. And unfortunately, the National Weather Service's mission is to provide wider alerts. But when you're talking about specific neighborhoods that are much hotter, or even individuals who are in much higher risk than others, more targeted, nuanced alerts might be an interesting solution to explore. We actually tracked apartments in New Orleans where the inside heat was hotter than outside conditions, which is something you usually expect to see in the North. not in a community where everyone's expected to have ACs. On top of that, the interior conditions of a home really played into heat and health risks. And we're working on that with RAND and the New Orleans Health Department next year in a 5-year heat study. We did sea level rise in Tex as well. I saw Melissa's here, so I threw in a lot of Tex examples, where we were able to prove that very moderate rains and moderate high tides were creating significant flooding, more than twice what NOAA modeled for sunny day flooding. And we were able to really create a conversation where once controversial infrastructure started to get buy-in and trust from local residents. And we saw changes in the way they were and the language that they were using around infrastructure. We also are starting to work on mitigation, where we're using ISeeChange for the equitable placement of EV charging stations in Chicago next year. It's our first work into mitigation, and we're really pumped about it. But I'm supposed to be here talking about Miami. Miami, I love Miami. Miami is the bomb. We started working directly with the city of Miami. We are the flood reporting tool for the city of Miami. We've been in this work for 2 years now. We are continuing this work in the next 2. We were able to really centralize data. This is the first time we started working with the city directly as a tool. And we centralized flood data across multiple departments for the city. So in addition to immediate response, we were able to send the data to the folks who are doing capital projects and planning. And so in other words, we were able to do, make things more efficient, lowering response times. So we were able to get the city of Miami to know that pumps were down in downtown Miami. And we were able to track inland flooding, which was really critical for some of their grants. As a result of ISeeChange data, they used ISeeChange data in 4 grant applications this year. We're used as a primary data source for a $20 million grant for the city of Miami that they just got. And we're really proud of that. And so they're starting to see opportunities to use ISeeChange for heat reporting, other kinds of reporting that is this weird mix of 311 weather and hard to solve and maybe can't solve. So maybe we need to all understand what the differences are. And so we're really exploring that with them. I'm just going to go real quick through the product and then just a few more examples from Miami and try and leave time for discussion. Okay, so we have a 4-part process. Everybody has a process. This is ours. We activate the stakeholders for our clients in very specific locations. We onboard them, we train them. The platform notifies residents in real time in response to real-time weather, as well as critical questions around the design solution. So if you're developing a green infrastructure project, what are the questions that are unanswered? We can send targeted message around that. We track over time with the weather event that we're tracking or the climate impact that we're tracking, and then we analyze the data from the community alongside third-party models. It looks so simple as a social media, but it is really detailed and rich. We sync to different kinds of weather feeds. If it has an API, we can work with it. Localized sensor networks. And then we, of course, do train residents to keep their own data. We do use not CocoRa's explicitly, but we use the National Weather Service rain gauges that CocoRa's uses as well to track flooding, which has a different protocol. We do use heat sensors for and different kinds of temperature and humidity sensors, flood height, duration, lots of important things. We want residents to participate anywhere and anytime. So we don't require equipment to participate. All you need is to sign up and find a location. We basically use, and we validate people's location multiple times in their process because location is so important to the information being accurate. Like traditional Twitter does not actually have location data that's accurate on most of that stuff. And you may be posting in a location that's different from where you originally were. We do use photos to help us make sure that the data is validated and verified. We also use AI to sort per post. So multiple things contribute to climate problems. And we can detect if you're talking about flooding, or you may also be talking about trees or green infrastructure. And that allows us to do multiple tags per individual post. And that AI also allows us to sync to the quantitative data that we're asking residents to collect. We report back. It's a really big deal. You can't just collect data and not talk to residents about it. So even if you're not in one of our partner or client areas, we do report back what the residents are seeing. It's really important to us. Miami. Okay, parts of this didn't reload. I don't know why they didn't load, but something didn't load, but I'm not going to worry about it. We had to make ISeeChange in Spanish, so we are available in Spanish, and then have the skinning available to work in multiple languages. We worked with local media, of course. We made flyers that were different, available in different languages. We use visuals, of course, when it comes to tidal flooding, because we're able to manage both pluvial and tidal flooding. We sync directly to the city's website. So if you are a municipality or working on an engineering project that has its own dedicated page, we can work with whatever channels you are working with and onboard you seamlessly onto the platform. This didn't load either. I don't know why, but we're going to keep going. When you come in from a geofence location, we give you examples of what kinds of posts our current community partners are looking for. So there's a gallery of best practices to teach people what kinds of information are really, really useful. When you come into the location from where we're working, you see your projects highlighted first in the feed. And if you're not logged in from that location, you won't see them. So it allows us to customize per location because everybody has different needs, but we don't want to be overwhelmed with information either. When you are a partner, you do have access to ISeeChange that the public does not. We do consider links, the information that we are collecting sensitive. Flooding data should not be out there for anyone to see anywhere. It has real, we have a do no harm policy, and we work with clients who respect that policy. So the city of Miami is trying to stop flooding, and so we're working with them and they have access to the detailed data. And when you're onboarded, you are made aware of that. Custom investigations, custom messaging. So this is what an in-app message looks like from our team. And this is what gets me really pumped. I'm gonna slow down here. Trust. We have an issue with trust in journalism. We have an issue with trust in science. And we have an issue in trust with our cities. And the social science around trust suggests that trust is not about big overtures. Trust is about little moments. And what we've seen with our municipal partners who are using ISeeChange, who get direct alerts on their phones when there's somebody posting about flooding or heat or whatnot, is that they're invited to speak and respond quite quickly back. And that little voice that comes from a real person, not a chatbot, that says, thank you so much. We appreciate what you're saying. We are sending help. We're sending a cleanup crew. That is being done automated in the world, and we are looking at that technology, but man, does it really make a difference for someone to acknowledge something personal. Some flooding is not managed well with green infrastructure or big infrastructure, and really acknowledging that this is happening and that we're looking at it. We're acknowledging that someone's data was used in a grant. It really matters. And we're really proud of that kind of relationship. This is also available to our clients and partners. It is really important to know who's talking and who is not. So a lot of our engagement efforts engagement is the greatest time suck. It takes so much time to develop real relationships with real people. And what our clients have been telling us is that they're using ISeeChange to figure out where they're not hearing from. And in Miami, it was in the non-English speaking neighborhoods. And that allows us to kind of be more efficient and targeted with our engagement efforts, because we know that the people who are noisy, who always show up to meeting, they're using the app and they're there. Let's spend time with the people who aren't heard. And what has been happening is that we are getting more information from these neighborhoods. So Little Havana, A La Para, Little Haiti, they've been heard, and their data was used in grants to get them more resources, because inland flooding is just as bad as coastal flooding. Just some quick numbers I'm going to scream through here. We were helpful in the city's Bloomberg What Works City certification program, and they really are crediting us with making the city more efficient with information and improving engagement. So one-stop shop for resilience leaders. I'm really proud of that quote. And then Healthy Little Havana talking about us being a Spanish language 311. I have issues with us being 311 because certain things are not fixable or serviceable when it comes to climate change. But I think there's a soft middle. I'm really proud of that work. Throwing this in for the researchers and the crew. We won a Sea Grant Innovation Award in 2020. We haven't really worked too much with Sea Grant, but we love working with researchers because we have the same visions and values that we do. We are a global platform with users across 118 countries, and we are open-armed collaborators. So please be in touch. We'd love to work with you.